All right, guys, let's get into our actual topics here. Now that we've, talked about James Earl Jones and hopefully with the respect that he so greatly deserves, but let's talk about the other topics that we have going on today. So, like I mentioned at the top of the show, this is going to be a very busy upcoming week in terms of new releases. Now, there aren't a lot of movies coming out in the next few weeks. We have some movies that I'm fairly excited about, including Transformers 1, Wild Robot, a couple animated films that have been getting pretty high praise, and then obviously Joker Folie à Deux is coming out in October. So really, intrigued by a lot of these entries, but not, you don't have your Moanas or Wickeds or anything like that coming out. But we have a lot of television coming out. Rings of Power obviously has been coming out to, mixed results in my opinion. Just in my opinion. I know a lot of people are really enjoying the show and other people are not based on the comments, but, just in my opinion to mixed results. But 2 more shows are coming out in the coming weeks. Agatha All Along will premiere on September 18th and The Penguin will premiere on September 19th. Now, as of the recording of this podcast, Agatha All Along has not had any initial reactions. That can change in the next couple days as I edit this and whatever, so just keep that in mind. But The Penguin actually has just unveiled its first reviews, and they are all spectacular. I mean, just glowing with praise for this crime drama, and a lot of people saying Colin Farrell gives one of the best performances in a comic book movie property, comic book show ever, and he just disappears in the role. A lot of awards buzz for Colin Farrell as Cobblepot, Oswald Cobblepot, who is the Penguin. Just a lot of heaping praise, Emmy consideration, all that kind of stuff. It's really exciting. So I thought we'd take a little bit of time here at the beginning of today's episode just to talk about some expectations and predictions that I have for both Agatha All Along and the Penguin. So let's start out with Agatha All Along, because let's be honest, I've been on record of saying that I'm not particularly excited for the show. The trailers have not done a whole lot for me, so I want to get to the Penguin later. So yeah, Agatha All Along is a show that to me has always kind of screamed, this is, part of the mandate, right, that was going on. By the way, there was that whole New York Times article about Bob Chapek and Bob Iger, and what a crazy story that was. So if you want to check that out, it's a really interesting and fascinating read. But anyways, all that to say, I thought Agatha All Along was sort of a result of the big mandate. And I don't know this for a fact. Agatha All Along could have been the spark that drove the next wave of Disney Plus shows, and they're going to be all spectacular from here on out. I don't know. But, I always had thought of it as sort of part of the mandate that Disney made with under Bob Chapek to just put out a ton of streaming shows to kind of varying degrees of success. And I count Ironheart in that as well, and Echo as well. So we'll see about that. But, one of the things that Agatha All Along has going for it is that it is being showrun for the first time. Marvel Disney Plus has a showrunner for the very first time, and it is none other than Jack Schaefer, who was, I believe, the head writer of WandaVision, which I have been on record of saying WandaVision is my currently second favorite MCU property of all time. For everyone who says Phase 4 didn't do anything good and the Multiverse Saga hasn't done anything good, guys, I mean, just because it's not as good as the Infinity Saga overall, and just because, a lot of the properties are disappointing, like Secret Invasion or the Marvels, doesn't mean that we haven't got our Shang-Chi's, which we'll talk about Shang-Chi later. Trust me, we'll talk about Shang-Chi later. Shang-Chi, WandaVision, Spider-Man No Way Home, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, in my opinion. I love that movie. It's just amazing that we have gotten a lot of these properties that we really love, and WandaVision was one of them. And so, really interested to see what Agatha All Along would bring. Agatha as a character in Agatha All Along was not necessarily my favorite part of that show. I thought that Catherine Hahn, as always, really charismatic, and she never fails to be charismatic, but the character itself just seemed a little bit one note. So the fact that they're trying to develop her into her own show, kind of interesting. So the first trailers come along for Agatha All Along, and we'll rehash this a little bit more next week as I talk about the first couple episodes. I think first 2 episodes of Agatha All Along. First trailers, haven't really done a whole lot for me. I think the show just kind of looks a little bit meandering, no pun intended, because literally it seems like the entire show is just going to be them taking 9 stops, because it's 9 episodes, on the Witch's Road. Joe Locke, maybe playing one of Wanda's kids in some kind of reanimated form. Who even knows at this point? So yeah, I mean, just not a whole ton that has gotten me super interested. And even the thought, there have been some rumors that they're going to revive Wanda Maximoff. And at this point, I'm not so sure I want that. Not because I don't like Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch is one of my favorite characters in the MCU, but just because it feels like it would just feel a little cheap to revive her, on Disney Plus and just be like, oh, she's back just because we wanted her to come back. I'm not sure. Maybe that's just me. that being said, I always say this. I've always said this. I go into these properties with an open mind. I want to really like as much of these Disney Plus shows, these movies, as I possibly can. So here are a couple things that I am, maybe expectations is the wrong word, but here's what I'm hoping for Agatha All Along. Number one, I'm really hoping for Agatha All Along to be stylistically different. It looks like it's different in the sense that it's going to be kind of serialized in that sense of, being along the Witch's Road and going on different adventures. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, but I think tonally, I'm really hoping for Agatha All Along to just feel separate, because they've talked about the fact that this is going to be leaning into horror. I haven't really seen a whole lot in the trailers that's convinced me of that. Nothing in the trailers have just been particularly scary. They just look kind of goofy, in my opinion. And so I'm really hoping that if you're going to do horror, do horror. If you're going to do kind of horror comedy, do horror, just lean in to whatever you're doing and make it unique. The second thing I'm hoping for, kind of alluding to my previous point, is that I really hope there is a streamlined story. It is totally fine to do serialized television where it's episodic. I think WandaVision is a fantastic example of that. And you just have to look at previous sitcoms like Friends or The Office or Parks and Rec. If they have individual episodes, you can pop on any episodes of my all-time favorite show, Friends, and it's going to be wonderful. But in each of those shows, and granted, those old sitcoms were 22, 24 episodes long each season, you had still an overarching story that's going on. And WandaVision was very much the same. So what I'm hoping from Agatha All Along is that there is a very strong overarching story, while still you can still totally have your individualized episodes, not a problem. Just I'm really hoping that they have an overarching story, and it just doesn't feel like a meandering, again, no pun intended, but also kind of pun intended. It's not a meandering walk down the Witch's Road, And the third thing I'm hoping for is that this somehow is tying things, more interconnectedly into the MCU, because at this point, look, I think it's fine. I think it's fine to introduce new characters, like, we have Agatha, who is a relatively new character and all that kind of stuff. But it is just starting to pile on and pile on and pile on without any hope in sight as we're approaching Avengers Doomsday. I know that Marvel has said, Kevin Feige has said that Captain America Brave New World, Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, that, they're all going to be starting to set up Avengers Doomsday from here on out. I'm just curious about, the Disney Plus shows, and, we have the new Vision show that's coming out, which is apparently going to be a conclusion to the quote-unquote trilogy of WandaVision, Agatha All Along, and now Vision. So I'm just, I'm curious, and I'm hoping to see some connections there, whether or not you revive Wanda, which I'm not personally hoping for, or whatever the case may be, but I'm just really hoping that Agatha All Along has something to say about where her place is in the MCU, other than just being another forgotten character. Because guys, think about this. She-Hulk hasn't shown up. Shang-Chi hasn't shown up, since their original shows. Werewolf by Night hasn't shown up. The Eternals have. It's just getting a little bit too much. So that's what I'm hoping for. And obviously on top of the fact that I'm really hoping Agatha All Along is just entertaining and a good show, that goes without saying, but these are more specific things that I'm really hoping for from Agatha All Along. Now let's turn our attention to DC's The Penguin. Now The Penguin, for those of you who aren't aware, is part of the Matt Reeves Batman universe, which is really exciting. I hope that this show coming out, I'm really glad that it's getting rave reviews, but I also hope that, this show is not an indication that, every time you make one of these shows, because it seems like they're going to be making more shows in the DC universe that is the Batman universe, that it just doesn't keep delaying these Batman films, because the Batman came out in 2022 and it doesn't look like we're getting another Batman film until late 2026, which is a little bit sad, a little bit disappointing. But anyways, it seems like this show is just really, really getting good reviews. So let's dive into 3 more expectations that I have for The Penguin, just like Agatha All Along. Number 1 is really lean in to the universe. Now, I don't mean that I want Batman in 30 minutes out of an hour of every single episode. That is not at all what I mean. What I mean is, and it seems like the trailers are doing such a great job of portraying this, you have built such a rich, interesting version of Gotham City that is taking inspiration from the comics and taking notes from all the other DC versions of Gotham City, but making it its own. It has this very unique kind of underground kind of feel. that I really love about the city. And especially after the ramifications of the Batman, where the city was flooded and obviously Falcone was killed, I think that there is so much rich potential to dive into this version of Gotham City. And I think that exploring that universe, again, this doesn't mean you have to have all the Batman Rogues Gallery showing up and whatnot. It just means that I would love it to really dive back into the ambiance of what that Batman film really was. That's number one. Number two is another lean into the crime part of this, because like Agatha all along, I'm hoping Agatha leans into the horror aspects of that show, even though I'm not even a big horror fan, but just have an identity, right? And it looks like the Penguin is going to do a fantastic job, but I'm really hoping that this is a true kind of crime thriller that we're going to see here, because we just don't get that a lot with superhero films and superhero shows. And so I'm really hoping that we get a very different kind of mafia-esque show where there's a kind of control for power in the underbelly of Gotham City, and Penguin is struggling to have an identity there and try to figure his way through. And speaking of which, number three, which deals with the Penguin himself as a character, I really hope that while Penguin comes out of the show and can enter the Batman Part 2 as still a villainous character, I actually really hope that there is some sympathy, that we have some lines of sympathy, and I don't know if the word is pity or whatnot, but even relatability maybe, I don't know. But I want to see a side of Penguin that, it's not just like a manic villain running chaos amongst Gotham City. I want this to be a show where, Penguin is doing bad things, but we understand his struggle. Perhaps we get a little bit more backstory of where he came from, sort of the sad, sympathetic, tragic villain origin story kind of feel. I'm really hoping that we get a very good sense of the Penguin as a character, because look, if we just get a crime drama where Penguin is just a villain and that's all there is to it, then that's fine. I'm sure it'll be really great. But I'm also hoping, as the cherry on top, that we get a little bit of an insight into the Penguin as well. Now, as a little bit of a quote-unquote half bonus, I should say, the question is Batman going to show up in the Penguin? And I think I would give it something like a 60 to 70% chance. So I'll split the difference. I'll go 65% chance that Robert Pattinson's Batman shows up, because I think, how hard would it be to have him show up in one or two scenes in the last episode? Not very hard, even a post-credit scene or something like that. But, the question of would I want Batman to show up in this show? Honestly, not really. I think that it's totally fine to just have the show just be about Penguin. So I think there's a decent chance that Batman shows up in the Penguin in the last episode. And if you had to, if I had to make a bet on it or anything like that, I would probably say yes, Batman shows up, but I wouldn't be super confident in it. And honestly, I don't know if I'd even want that. So you'll have to let me know in the comments down below, what show, first of all, out of Agatha All Along or the Penguin, are you most excited about? And then secondly, for each of the shows, what are you most looking forward to as we head into the premieres of both of these shows? Let me know in the comments down below.